Kemba Walker is on his way to the New York Knicks. Let's get into this. After a very successful season last season and the first year the Knicks made the playoffs in 8 years, the Knicks going into this season had pretty high expectations in free agency. Knicks fans were hoping and sometimes in some regards expecting the Knicks to sign Kawhi Leonard and trade for Damian Lillard. The media was saying the Knicks have to get a superstar this offseason or it was a bust. A lot of people around the league were also saying the Knicks must get a superstar to take that next step. But in reality, none of those things were ever true. Coming into this free agency, everybody knew that this was a much weaker class than in years past. There was no true superstars in this class except for a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who obviously is a very legit superstar in this league. But the issue with Kawhi is it was pretty likely that he was going to re-sign with the Clippers. There have been reports out for months already that he was going to stay, and at this point, at the time of recording the video, Kawhi has still not officially signed with the Clippers, but it's pretty clear that he is going to re-sign with them long term. And besides him, there weren't too many guys out there. Maybe a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who's an all-star level, he's not even a superstar level. A guy like Lonzo Ball, who's not even an all-star level, but he is a very good young talent that could turn into one. But this free agency period was definitely a lot weaker than in years past. In a traditional free agency period, when there's superstar and just a ton of great players in the market, it's still very difficult to convince a superstar to come to your team. But especially when you look at the free agency class that we had this year, where Kawhi Leonard was basically the only superstar on the block, it was basically impossible. The expectations that everybody was putting on the Knicks was if they didn't get Kawhi Leonard, who was already most likely going to re-sign with the Clippers and had no chance at leaving basically, if they didn't get Kawhi Leonard, it was a complete failure and complete bust. But in my opinion, I completely disagree with that notion. I think what the Knicks had to do this offseason was just get better. Bring in a true point guard to help them out because that was something they were missing for decades now, but especially on the team last season in the playoffs. But also bring in another primary ball handler to score the ball and just take a lot of pressure off Julius Randle as well as keeping a lot of flexibility in terms of the contracts that you're dishing out. And when you look at what the New York Knicks were able to do overall, especially now with signing a guy like Kemba Walker, who I'll get into pretty soon, I think the Knicks had a very good free agency. But now let's get into the man of the video, which is Kemba Walker. So there have been reports out recently that the Oklahoma City Thunder, in a surprising move by the way, are going to buy out Kemba Walker and the New York Knicks are actually going to sign him. At the time of recording the video, the full contract details are not out yet, so I'm not exactly sure what the contract's going to look like, but there have been a few reports out that the Knicks are looking to offer Kemba Walker $8 million per year, which is crazy for two reasons. So usually when a star player is bought out by the team, they sign with a new team for a relatively cheap contract. And when you talk about Kemba Walker potentially signing with the New York Knicks for $8 million per year, that would go with the flow of usually what buyout players usually do. But the reason why this is crazy to me is a guy like Kemba Walker signing with a new team in the offseason for only $8 million per year is an absolute steal for the Knicks. So that's one reason why I think this is crazy. But another reason is because the report that have been out would lead you to believe that Kemba Walker may sign with the New York Knicks for multiple seasons for only $8 million per year, which is absolutely nuts to me. Getting Kemba Walker fresh off a buyout for $8 million for one season as more of just a prove-it type deal is something that we've definitely seen in the past and would make sense to me for Kemba Walker's perspective. But if Kemba Walker signs a multiple year deal, maybe 2-3 year deal worth $8 million per year with the New York Knicks, that's an absolute steal for the New York Knicks, and it's a very team-friendly deal. But that's the contract situation at the moment at the time of recording this video. But let's talk about Kemba Walker. What does he do as a player? So after last season, I think a lot of fans have a sour taste of what Kemba Walker can do and maybe think he's washed up after how he played last season, because last season he was very injury prone, he got injured a ton, as well as just not having a great season overall. But typically when you're getting injured that much, you're not going to get a real flow and not really play well whatsoever. But also when you talk about Kemba Walker is playing for the Celtics, and the Celtics had a very terrible year last year as well, it just wasn't a great situation for him. But for Kemba Walker now from the Bronx and from New York, coming to play for the New York Knicks, his home team, I think is really going to re-energize him. And also just based on the fact they didn't play last year and a lot of fans around the NBA are doubting him, I think that just gives him a ton of motivation, and I think he's going to come into this season playing extremely great. The first thing I personally think of when I talk about a guy like Kemba Walker is just scoring ability. He can score from any aspect on the court. He's a great three-point shooter. He's a very good mid-range pull-up shooter. He's great at getting all the way to the basket. He's just a very complete and well-rounded three-level scorer. But first, let's talk about Kemba Walker three-point shooting ability. So this previous season where Kemba Walker definitely had a down season, he was shooting a pretty good 36% from deep, just considering how many threes he takes. And also consider this was a down season for Kemba Walker. Walker. So if Kemba Walker can get his percentage up to maybe 37-38% or even higher than that, would just be gravy, then he would obviously just be that much better on the offensive end. But from that 3-point line, Kemba Walker's a guy who definitely can catch and shoot, but his main bread and butter is when he has the ball in his hands and he's creating. This guy's a great sidestep, step back. He has great handles as well to break down the defender and just get open shots. But also what he could do is he definitely plays very well in the pick and roll offense. So he could definitely run a great high screen and roll with either Julius Randle or a guy like Mitchell Robinson and get that pretty open shot from that 3-point line and just pull up and hit that very consistently. From the 3-point range, Kemba is definitely somebody who's a very good shooter from there. But now let's talk about Kemba Walker's mid-range shooting ability. So as I mentioned before in the video, Kemba has a very good pull-up mid-range jump shot, and in my opinion, that's a very effective shot because it really puts your defender off balance, pulling up that quickly like Kemba does. And also when you consider the fact that Kemba's a pretty short NBA player in terms of NBA standards at 6'1", having that great pull-up mid-range jump shot to put your defender off balance is a very effective shot for him, especially when you consider he's shorter than everybody else, and it's much easier to get a block shot on him or a very good contest on him. But maybe Kemba Walker's best ability on the offensive end is actually getting all the way to the basket and finishing. So as I mentioned before in the video, compared to NBA standards, Kemba Walker is pretty short at that 6'1" size, and he's not a guy who's an insanely athletic player that can just dunk over anybody when he gets to the basket. But what Kemba Walker does do is he is sneaky athletic and has pretty good hang time. But what he does do is he has great layup packages, and he can stay in the air long enough to outlast the defender and just put up crazy layups and great angles. He can finish a lot of layups around better defenders like guys like Rudy Gobert. He can finish around them pretty easily. He's just very efficient and effective when getting all the way to the basket and putting up those creative layups. So on the offensive end, Kemba Walker is definitely a very effective player, and there's a reason why people gave him the nickname of the mini Kyrie. Kyrie Irving is obviously insanely talented and can do everything on the offensive end, and Kemba Walker is not at that level, but Kemba Walker is definitely a miniature version and a budget version of Kyrie Irving, which is still a very good player, by the way, and definitely a legitimate all-star player in this league. One thing though that Kemba Walker definitely struggles with is his defense. On the defensive end, Kemba Walker isn't necessarily gifted with great size. He is only 6'1" compared to other NBA players, which is pretty small, and overall he's just not a great defender due to that, and a lot of times whoever he's guarding could just bully him and drive all the way to the basket and muscle through him and just finish layup, which makes it pretty tough for him on the defensive end. But as I mentioned in a few other of my videos, whenever you have a guy who is not a great defender on an overall good defensive team or even great defensive team, you can always hide that player. And on the Knicks, they are a very good defensive team at the very least, so I think they'll have not too many issues with Kemba Walker on the defensive end. Overall, I think they can hide him pretty effectively. But now let's talk about, besides the physical skills that he has and what he's good at specifically, let's talk about how Kemba Walker specifically helps this New York Knicks team. So first, the New York Knicks are obviously getting a guy who's another ball handler to add on their team, as well as a legitimate scorer to take pressure off guys like RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. So first, that helps them a tremendous amount. But one thing that I think that helps them out tremendously as well that maybe not a lot of people realize is last season the Knicks were great in getting into close games, and sometimes they were finishing, but a lot of times they weren't able to finish games because Julius Randle just wasn't enough and he didn't have enough help on his team. But now adding a guy like Kemba Walker, who's known for being clutch, he has a nickname Cardiac Kemba because he's been so clutch throughout his career, is going to be amazing for this Knicks team. Having a true closer going into the clutch is going to be such a big upgrade from what they had last season. Julius Randle is great and he's definitely a star and he's definitely getting better throughout the years, but especially when you talk about a guy who's at that power forward position, sometimes it is hard to close just because you're at that power forward position and not really a point guard. But also on top of that, Julius did have some troubles closing, so having a guy like Kemba Walker who can not only take pressure off Julius Randle, but is a guy who is known as being a great closer is going to help them out significantly, and I think that fact alone, the Knicks are going to win some more games that they would have lost last season. So overall, I think this is definitely going to be going down as a pretty underrated signing for the Knicks, and maybe a lot of people think that Kemba Walker's washed based on his performance last year. But overall, when I think this season is all said and done, people are going to see that Kemba Walker was a humongous signing for the Knicks. And also considering the risk that the Knicks took, which is basically none, by giving this guy $8 million per year, either on a one-year deal or a multi-year deal, which would be amazing for the Knicks. I think this is an amazing signing for the Knicks and really rounds out their free agency pretty well. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Kemba Walker was a great signing for the New York Knicks, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.